Welcome to our guests. It's 5:30 Pacific time, so we will get started because we want to honor everybody's time. So you want to begin?
Welcome, everyone. So glad that you're here with us this evening during Black History Month. And we just want to acknowledge that all land is Indigenous land and all are welcomed here, all races, genders, cultures, abilities, sexual orientations. You're all valued, heard, accepted, and welcomed here.
Thank you. And I'm going to read because even though I created the webinar, I don't like to, it's just easier for me to have some structure. So we created the webinar to engage in honest and authentic conversations about the longtime injustice of racism in America. During the webinars, we discussed systemic racism in an effort to dismantle white supremacy, otherwise known as white crimes, white violence, white hatred. From the inside out, which is kind of ironic because we have a spa called Inside Out. Our intention with these webinars is to participate in sustainable action. So for us to be in sustainable action and to encourage sustainable action from others. We prefer and like to highlight the voices of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color members. We give, hopefully, we give a safe space where our guests can feel like they can be brave and speak about what is on their minds, their hearts, their experiences in a way that they can be here and land softly, be held. This is an opportunity to hear about their experiences and challenges and hopes without the need to educate white people, but just to be here and be present, and we can be present for them. But also, this is our opportunity for Jody and I to provide resources to folks of all backgrounds in a way to self-educate them and to also allow them to be more learned allies. And I will say that the biggest piece that I think has just been instrumental for us is sustainability. We see a lot of people go to rallies and then they never do anything ever again. We see somebody talk about having read a book and then they never do anything again. And there's a hype and then it's like this crash and then another hype and a crash. And so we can't force anybody out there to do anything, and we can't expect other people to do what we do. But this has been one of the elements that have been very important to us to do sustainable action. And we started this, as many folks did start things, but in May of 2020, after the death of George Floyd. And our hope is that we can inspire those of you out there watching to also participate in something sustainable. And that could be as little as reading a book every week or month, or speaking out in public, or just making a commitment to watch your language, to check your biases. It can be anything. So without further ado, we're going to do some introductions. Then we're going to watch in honor of Black History Month, we're going to watch the anthem be sung by a beautiful quintet. And then we're going to hand the microphone over to our guests so that they can speak and have the space. So introductions.
Good evening. My name again is Jody Lewis. I am an attorney. I work for a nonprofit organization providing representation to survivors of domestic violence and gender-based violence. Misha started the webinar and then asked me to co-facilitate it with her. And for me, it was important. I am white. I have white privilege, and using that word has been interesting because some people on this webinar have called it out, saying we shouldn't be saying white privilege because it's still putting whites ahead. And others have said you should be using it. When I'm using it, for me, it means that I have had benefits because, and my ancestors have had benefits because of our white skin. And those benefits have not been earned in many ways, right? They're unearned privileges that I have gotten because of my white skin. My ancestors have gotten white skin that have included things like housing, accumulated wealth that Black people of color, Indigenous people have not had because of systemic racism. And for me, it's important to acknowledge that privilege, to talk about it, to listen to Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color, and connect with people to make this a better world.
Thank you. And you're an attorney working for a nonprofit.
I said that.
Did you? I didn't hear that. Oh,
that's the first thing I said.
I didn't hear that. And she's my fiance, and I get into this control mode. So I said, I'm working on this. Okay. I'm Misha Safran. I was an educator for 30 years and mother, and now a transformational life coach trainer. And really in the areas of inclusion and belonging is where I like to support leaders to change their frame of thinking and the way they respond and react to folks. Yeah, I don't really need to say much more about myself there. I will say that I'm still exploring my race story. I'm in a class right now called How to Facilitate Racially Just Spaces. But apparently that's class number 2. And the first class is How to Talk About Race, where you really get a good understanding of what your race is. I feel kind of stuck in the middle around my race. I consider myself biracial, coming from a Jewish heritage and Middle Eastern. And also Jews, there's a book called When Did Jews Become White? So it's a real challenge for me. And I'm just being really honest that I'm in the middle of trying to figure out who I am. And at that point, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because I am white presenting. But I also have been experienced colorism and been escorted out of a building as a result of looking Middle Eastern and being of that descent. So especially after 9/11. But all that to say that no matter what I'm an ally, and I don't care for hatred, violence, or crimes against people of color. I don't stand for it. I don't condone it. So I want to share my screen so that I can introduce you to our guests because I care deeply for all of them. The first guest that I want to introduce you to is, excuse me. So we have Angela and Martin Baxter. And Angela and Martin at the farmers market. There they are. Peace. Yep, absolutely. And they are proud owners of this wonderful new spa in Martinez, California called the Inside Out Spa. I have the pleasure of enjoying their saunas. And they decided to pursue infrared saunas and halo salt therapy to offer alternative holistic ways for our community to live a healthy and active lifestyle. They dated at the age of 14 when interracial dating was not socially embraced. They had parted ways due to stigma of interracial relationships and found each other in August of 2017 and married in November 2017. And they both had biracial children from previous relationships. So we'll all say hello to Angela and Martin.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. It's a great platform.
We're really glad
participating in it though. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, explain.
And then I'll introduce you to Sharda Coleman. Shar and I met in a certified life coach course training. So I got to know Shar. And she has been a single mother of 2 beautiful boys for 19 years. And according to Shar, hands down, they're the greatest accomplishment in her life. 2009, she earned her BS in Human Resource Development. 2016, she was proud to finish her graduate school and a master's in Human Service Counseling. She's been a business professional for the past 24 years, specializing in human resources. And she currently works as a senior manager of people and culture. She's elated to have earned her life coaching certification earlier this month. I can't wait till she boosts her business and just does amazing things to support people as she continues to do, because she's currently the director of advocacy for her husband. And he was wrongfully convicted of a crime. And she's got a petition that she's circulating to support raising awareness for his case and hopefully getting him out of prison. So welcome to all of you. Shar, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And so we'll just start with the anthem. And I thought I had it available on my screen, but I'm not seeing it. So you know what I'll do is I'll hand the mic over and we'll end with the anthem.
Yeah.
Because I think we've been here almost 9 minutes, and I just don't like to go further than 10 minutes without giving the microphone over to our guests. So we'll end with the anthem. So I would say whoever would like to go first, just share with us what you feel. Oh, sorry. Those of you watching, this is not an opportunity for you to agree or disagree with the feelings and experiences of our guests. These feelings and experiences belong to our guests, Shar, Angela, and Martin. And so it's an opportunity for us to learn, but not really they're not teaching us. We're here to be present and to hold the space. And hopefully you'll take away. Hopefully we've got empathics here in our audience, and just know that what these friends are about to do is share what they feel comfortable sharing. If you have questions, we'll be looking on Facebook to see if you have questions. If y'all in the audience here of the webinar have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. They may get to them, they may not, but we're really here just to hold space for the three of you. So the microphones are yours.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I'll start off. Misha, I'm in kind of in the same boat as you as far as like my inner unsureness with my heritage. Although I will say, as I get older, it even though it is important, it almost is less important. As long as I know a majority of who I am and who I am inside and from the heart and from where my soul is. And like you, don't condone meanness, brutality, racism. My mother was Mexican and Native American and Basque. My father was English, Scottish, and Blackfoot Indian. So multi-race, racial. I don't have a percentage of what is what. But I mean, people can never figure out when they look at me what I look like. I have the last name Baxter, and so a lot of people assume that I'm Caucasian. And so growing up in San Francisco, my father was a police officer. It was during kind of really rough times. There was a lot of race riots. We lived in front of a high school that had a lot of race riots. And my dad was at that time, he is Caucasian, and he was on the riot squad. And when they would come and file out of these vans and start attacking these high school kids who were fighting each other, it was kind of obvious early on that when there were white kids fighting, that they didn't get the brunt of the force from the police. It was usually the other side that was getting it, right? I mean, occasionally some of the white kids would get detained or what have you, but that's a lot different than getting your head split open from a billy club, for example. My mom was denied services in the state of Nevada when she was a young adult for being Mexican. And there were some other things that went on in the city where she grew up, which is Salinas, like in the Monterey coast and Carmel area, where we still have native ties there, indigenous ties there. And then when I was growing up in San Francisco, we were doing busing back then, and busing would take kids from different cultures and neighborhoods and switch them, right? And they would fill you on the bus, and they would, in my case, they send me to Hunters Point. They sent all the kids from Hunters Point over to our neighborhood. And so it was a way to interact more with each other. And it was not a very successful experiment. And I wasn't treated very well the first couple of years until I learned a little bit about how to handle myself.
And culture.
And the culture. And I used to be like, why are these people so mad at me? What did I do to them? But they weren't mad at me, right? They weren't mad at me. They were mad at the situation. And the situation was just, that was even back then when we had Black Panthers.
Yeah.
Right. And so my dad, his perspective was not favorable when it came to African Americans because of the things that he had to deal with as a police officer, which I felt was really, as I grew older and tried to figure out like what he must have been going through inside, dealing with all those things from work, but also having married a Mexican American, which nobody else in his family went outside of the Caucasian race to marry, right? So I knew his heart was big and he didn't care about things like that, but I think the daily grind of work and all the things that were forced upon him, and that he joined. I know he joined for all the right reasons, community and city and positive, but after for a while, something like this can change. And so I look at the police officers today and what they're doing to these innocent people who are most often just trying to flee for their lives with no weapons. It may not even be a call that comes across as a violent crime, and they're still getting gunned down from behind or for no reason with multiple police officers on one person. And, you know, I know my dad and the things he used to say when he would come home, and none of it sounded like that. You know, so I don't know like how that's all changed. I'm sure a lot of it was going on at the time, but maybe in different parts of the country a little more than it was in San Francisco, maybe. My perspective then is, you know, it's kind of all over the place. I try to look at things through his eyes. I try to look at some of the things that my mom went through, my Indian heritage. And then when we were trying to date, it was tough at the age of 14 and 15 to try to bring this up at the dinner table, that I was dating Angela. And so I think my mom had found out and she was very upset, which I didn't understand why. And at those days, we didn't really communicate well. So I never really got to the bottom of that. But it was enough to, out of respect for my parents, to stop dating Angela, which was a huge mistake. But we went on our different life's paths and then reconnected after 35 years. And you know, we were married within 3 months of reconnecting. And that was something that we should have done a long time ago. Yeah. So, but what I was going to say is the things that she's opened my eyes to, when we go to restaurants, when we go to stores, things like that, where people, you know,
But you have to pay attention.
You have to pay attention. You have to keep your eyes open, your ears open. You don't normally see it or hear it,
Yeah.
But then she'll point it out to me. And first few times I was like, I don't know, you know, but then I kept seeing it over and over and over. And I was like, holy crap, it's all around us every day. You know, it really is.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm here to hopefully make a difference. And, you know, and love is something that's hard to find. It seems like these days, you know, or common respect for other people is what I should say. Love like ours is a blessing. And sometimes other people have to see it to understand it and to accept it, you know. But yeah. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I am just delighted because when we all met at that farmer's market on that Sunday, I did not know that you had dated when you were younger. I just knew that you had kind of found each other again. Wow. And then there was like this, like, I want you.
Well, that's still true.
Well, good. So that is like, so, I mean, I just love that you shared that story. And I also am just like thinking about how painful that is to not be able to have what you want because of what other people think you should. And that's, I mean, that's kind of a societal, cultural thing in a lot of different areas, sure. Right? Especially with interracial. But how beautiful that you've come back together and can kind of walk this journey together despite the fact that there are barriers.
For sure. Still barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's intense. It's not, nothing's changed. I mean, there are, well, I'm sorry, let me take that back. Some things have changed. We have a long way to go and a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And I love that you have each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I know Angela, I have a client that's coming in soon, so I want to make sure you get to speak and share.
Let me just. Yeah, mine is going to be quick. Well, not really too quick, but I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. Very, very poor. Grew up very poor, but didn't realize we were poor because, you know, it was just happy. I felt it was a good time in the 60s to be Black. I didn't know anything different other than, you know, we had Marvin Gaye on the radio. We had James Brown. We had, you know, Motown. We had Michael Jackson. So that was our life. That was our happiness through music and just being with family. And then we moved to California. And it kind of opened up my eyes because coming from Indianapolis to where there really is segregation, growing up there, and then coming to California to where I was accepted to go into certain places, which was interesting. I was like, oh my God, I get to go here, and no, people are talking to me. You know, it was definitely a cultural shock for us coming from that background. But as the years have gone on, I've had experiences with racism my entire life in California. I played tennis, professional tennis for 25 years, and, playing, being the only Black family or African-American family in Northern California playing tennis at the time. It was certainly hard because you would hear the parents say, you better not lose to that Black girl. If you lose, like they would do anything, they would cheat, they would do anything. Being excluded a lot for the most part of my life playing tennis because I was in a predominantly country club atmosphere. So it's just not been easy at all, even in the workplace, not easy, being usually the only Black woman, Black person in the entire company. Usually it's very hard, that's a lot to hold on to. Moving to New York, it was great because it wasn't just me on the floor. I had other people. But even there, it was like, people telling me, my bosses, VP, oh, you know how to think. I'm like trying to, what do you mean I know how to think? So, there's just tons of things you have to overcome in the workplace, in your life, and paying attention to it. And we hold it in because we can't retaliate because you don't want to lose your job. You don't, you don't want to, I want to sue you because you're saying all of these derogatory things to me. But the bottom line is we just can't speak up because of the backlash of what that means to us as African-American people or people of color. We just don't have that type of voice to where we're not going to get scrutinized for it. So that's all I really have to say.
Well, and I would say, I mean, in our country, instead of being an assertive woman, you would be an angry Black woman, right? I mean,
Right. Like, or an introvert, which is what I learned recently is, we get into these situations where it's not like we don't know how to do the work, but we become introverts because, the language, we're not speaking the correct language.
yeah.
We're not speaking the language that, like a Stanford, Harvard grad would speak, or because our cultures are so different.
Right.
So I kind of just feel that those are things that should change, is learn how to speak. It doesn't mean that I'm not capable of doing the job. I've been let go a lot of jobs because of race, and but I'm hanging in there. I fight every day. I get back up, get back down, get back up, and you just got to hope one day you find the right fit, and that's what you got to hope, and hope people like this, like today, it's changing. Be aware of what you say, be aware that, how you treat people, that it's going to make a big difference in a lot of people's lives going forward, for sure.
Yeah. Martin, you said something. You said you have to keep your ears and eyes open. And that really struck somebody in our audience here, but it also struck me. And I'm just curious about the two of you and what you do for self-care. How do you take care of yourselves when it's so I'm in this class that we're in, I had to come up with a presentation on racial battle fatigue. And
that's what it is.
It's like, it was interesting because I created this quick little PowerPoint, not realizing that it was exactly what it needed to be. It was a white backdrop with the Black words, racial battle fatigue. And what it looked like to me was that the Black words were shrinking into the whiteness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was, and it was scary. It was like, this is what's happening to people every minute of every day. So how do you take care of yourselves?
I became a Buddhist 20 years ago, and you go the whole life, confessions to yourself about what's important to you. And I think I had to learn I had to put myself in other people's shoes, the mom said, just kind of have some compassion, and so I do develop that part to just have compassion for people who just don't have compassion. I'm going to have that compassion for you, and I'm going to always try to kill you with kindness if I can, and that's just what it has to come down to change people's minds. You might not get everybody, but you'll get a few.
Do you have that same compassion for yourself?
Yeah, well, sometimes, like you said, you get worn down. No, but for me, like somebody told me, goes, oh my God, you have this, and this going on, but you just seem to let it roll off your back. But it's more like, I don't want to hold on to it. I can't hold on to it. I'm still going to say I'm number one. I know what it's like to be number one playing tennis. So I know what that looks like. I know how to challenge that part of myself to never let anybody tell me I'm not worthy. So, always feel worthy regardless of where you are. Yeah, that's self-care. Know your value.
Yeah. There's a little
Myself, one of the things I failed to mention earlier was my mom.
You guys are breaking up just a little bit. Hold on a second.
Was,
Try again. You're freezing.
how about now?
Oh, I still see you right there.
Okay, try again.
We good?
Yep,
Yeah,
now
I
you're
think
good.
so.
Okay, real brief. Okay. One of the things I wanted to mention earlier was my mom was born with a birth defect. So she was born with a cleft palate and a hair lip, and she had a really strong speech impediment. And so as a kid, she obviously is a kid back in she was born in 1929, so the 30s, 40s, 50s. She, sustained a lot of mean kids, teens and stuff. And so when she had me, she really made sure that I never made fun of people with birth defects or, people who are struggling in life for whatever reason, whether it be financial, mental health, whether it be physical limitations, whatever it was. And compassion is often looked at as a sign of weakness, right? Depending on how it's displayed, when it's displayed, and who sees it. But I've always tried to follow that rule. And I think that is something that it doesn't come natural for people these days. And I just don't understand how that's been lost. How has that been lost? When I have 4 kids of my own, and I always told them, I don't care what you do in life. You can make $1 million, you can make $50,000, doesn't matter. You always want to be happy at work, number one. Number two, you always treat everybody around you, even strangers, with the utmost respect and kindness. Always, 100% of the time. And I'm glad to say that my oldest daughter went to work for indigenous tribe up in northern Sacramento, and she's working as a social worker on the reservation, and she followed that rule of thumb, and it's serving her very well. Yeah. So, but for me, how do I don't know, just treat people very well. I mean, when people are crappy all around us and the news is only showing bad stuff every time you turn it on, and it's like on a loop, it just shows it over and over again every 15 to 20 minutes. It's the same bad news all the time, every day. And it's just like, how do I combat that? Well, today I can treat everybody super kind, even when they're in my face acting aggressive. Like she says, kill them with kindness and show compassion. Yep. So for me, when I can do that and turn people around and see their actual, you could see the way that they leave you versus the way they approached you, and it's a 180, then you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And that's how I deal.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Want to make sure we give you time at the end to tell everybody about your spa, but we'll go on to Shar, share whatever you feel like you want to share.
Sure, I'll try not to be too long because I'm not a nutshell version person, but Angela, what you said resonated with me because you give me like new wind and meaning to why being an HR professional is so important to me, to make sure that there's like a safe space for everyone in the workplace, like all different ideas, all different backgrounds. So thank you for sharing that. I hope I can do my little part for all different backgrounds to be included at my company. And Martin, I think, touched on something really important. I saw this post on Instagram today about how racism is really a generational thing. It's taught from generation to generation. And I put a little comment on there that, you know, in the 1970s, Alabama was still doing medical experiments on African-American men. And it's those people who they were teaching their children who are the district attorneys, judges, and police officers of today, right? And so that's the environment in which my husband was wrongfully convicted. And so people like Martin, people like me, you know, all of us in this room that are teaching our children differently is so important to changing our society, person by person. So thank you both for sharing that. So I haven't had like much of a painful background myself. I mean, I do live in a primarily white community, or it was when we moved to this suburb in the 90s. But my family immigrated to the United States from Trinidad in the 1960s. And so I'm first generation American citizen. There's no category for me on the paper, so I have to choose Asian because my family dates back to India. But the reason why Misha invited me is because I actually advocate for my husband's wrongful conviction. And he's been, his official conviction happened on January 5th of 2012. And we met on a Christian dating app in September of 2020 and just like became friends. And so once I realized how horrifying his story was, that he literally had no prior convictions, he was a homeowner, he was a single father, just the fact that there was like no evidence, no physical evidence against him. He was wrongfully convicted on out of court statements by a preschooler with echolalia, which is a disorder where the person repeats what they hear other people saying, and red flags for autism. The district attorney that prosecuted his case has been written about in national publications. The judge later made racially charged blog posts. Like, I can go on and on about this all night. So I decided I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, okay, like, there are these people who have stepped forward saying they heard a full confession from the perpetrator. I'm going to give it a go. Just single mom, me, like working full time with my illness. I'm going to just give it a try. And I started a change.org for him Mother's Day weekend of 2021, like roughly 8 months after we met. And on that same weekend launched an Instagram page that I still run. And I also raise awareness for other people's cases, police brutality. I try to use his platform to educate people in general, not just about his case. And so his case will actually be heard on this coming Thursday, as far as the people who heard a full confession. And so we're hoping that he'll finally be home after over a decade of suffering in the most dangerous prison in the state of Alabama. And for people who don't know, Alabama is being sued by the Department of Justice for its inhumane and dangerous and overcrowded prison conditions. So I know more awaits him when he comes home as far as healing from PTSD and different things. But so yeah, that's my story.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you what you're doing for your husband. Thank you for what you're doing for Black people. You know, your husband is a representative of a community that is constantly facing Black hatred, crimes and violence and misrepresentation.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And what's really one of the things that's very sad about his story is that the lead detective in his case was Black, and told my husband that he was going to make sure that he became another Black statistic. So it's just sad that, you know, Black people would do this to Black people, but it's a whole sad story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, it's this is why we all need to work on being learned allies, right? Because it's within the race, it's external, it's internal. And so how do we as a society support each other instead of keep pointing fingers at each other?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, when Tyree was killed, they advertised that there were 5 Black officers,
Mhm.
and they were suspended right away. But the officer that killed George Floyd wasn't suspended right away, wasn't even fired. So, and people were focusing on the fact that these were Black officers. See what happens? So Black officers do it too, but that's not the point. They were
Right.
suspended like that, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to there being, so it's just, I mean, it's a mess, and that's not going to help anybody feel any better. But the inequity, and there's Jews that don't like Jews. There are whites that don't like whites. There are Blacks that don't like Blacks. And so it's about how to bring folks together instead of constantly pointing the finger, and creating equity within our diversity.
Well, and it's, I mean, that white supremacy culture and that foundation is so embedded in this country and other countries, and it's putting, you can think of it as a foundation of a house, right? And just staying there, and we have to keep putting cracks in it until we can just completely dismantle it. And that's why we see people of all races engaging in racist policies or racist actions on that piece, because it's so embedded within our culture. I want to just do a little bit of to give some research regarding numbers. I mean, both Martin Shar talking about police and state action violence against Black individuals, particularly Black males. I put it in context. I'm going to be 50 in June. I'm white. I've never been I've been pulled over for minor traffic violations. I can count on less than my hand how many times, and most of those probably didn't even get ticketed. Never been stopped and frisked, never been followed in a store, even if I'm holding like a big backpack or anything. I don't think I've had any family members arrested or stopped and frisked. When we look at statistics, you look at like New York City, where the stop and frisk policies really started. The difference is 8 to 1. So 8 Black people are being stopped compared to like 1 white person. And then on top of that, I think this is the thing that really gets me regarding these policies that are so racist, and police departments say, no, they're not racist. Well, yeah, they are, because Black people are being stopped and they don't have contraband on them. Whites are more likely to have contraband on them, but they're not being stopped. And not only do they not have contraband on them, but violence is being used against them. And that's just one piece, right? That's the initial being targeted regarding surveillance and control and stopped. And we can talk about bail, and we can talk about incarceration and those pieces as well. But I just wanted to kind of put a little bit of context around, I think, what people knows are happening. But when you really look at the numbers, it's staggering, and how unfair the system is, and how targeted it is, and how racist the policies are, and what's happening.
And to give light to what you were saying, Jody, and his name escapes me, God rest his soul, of course, because I want to talk about it now. But this young man, teenager in New York, people listening probably know his name, who committed suicide because exactly what you're saying. He was stopped because for supposedly stealing a backpack, which later on, found out he never did that. But he was sitting in, I want to say it was probably Rikers, and was in there for so long because like a lot of people can't afford to bail themselves out, right? And so then they have to sit there for lengthy periods of time until their arraignment, or they finally get to go in front of a judge. Well, by the time he got out and was freed, he was so Khalif Browder, thank you. See, he was so traumatized from that, he ended up taking his life, so these policies are literally killing our Black men, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly.
Yeah.
Well, as they state, half of all young Black men are in jail. And then, we're quote we're always saying, oh, we can't find a good Black man, he's probably in jail, you know. So I mean, you know, so but it's just really, really sad, you know, that we're here at this point. I'm just beside myself with all the brutality that we go through.
Well, the police brutality is also here in California. They just stated within the last 2 to 3 days that they're looking at stopping police departments from using dogs. And they had said one of the reasons why was because whenever a dog is active in an arrest or a detainment, there's usually really bad harm, and that it was somewhere upwards of 75 to 80% of the people that were harmed are people of color. So I don't know how that really is taught to the dogs, but apparently it's not something that naturally happens. It's got to be something that's taught, whether it's the people that they're training them, they all wear dark clothes. I'm not sure, but they're looking at taking dogs away from police for that reason. So that might be a move in the right direction.
Thank you for that. And I imagine, well, I mean, Shar, you're married to a Black man who's struggling to have his life again outside of prison. And Angela, you're a mother.
I got a 16-year-old young male, which was scary at the time when Trump was elected. My son said, "Oh, Mom, are we going to have to leave? I'm a young Black man. How am I going to be treated?" So he was already scared at that point in time. And it was I just couldn't believe that we're here, you know. It's like 2023 and we're going backwards, you know, and the lynching and everything is just, you know, it's like a nightmare, honestly. You know, I know my parents are probably turning over in their grave thinking that it was probably going to be past us, but it's not. It's still very much alive and well and kicking. And I've got 10 million experiences to let you know that, you know, it's still very much alive in my experiences that I've had. And it's just shocking, the amount of trauma that we go through on a daily basis that we can't talk about because without being ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
So.
In the class we are taking together, they showed this video. And I think it actually applies not only to microaggressions and how it impacts, but also just racial battle fatigue. And it was a video of a person getting bit by a mosquito, and you know, that hurts, and then going on. But then another mosquito, another mosquito, another mosquito, and like it's constant mosquitoes.
Right.
But it doesn't go away. And then the impact of that is the swelling and the fact that there's nothing you can do like to get this pain out.
Right. Exactly. It's like PTSD. It's like having PTSD, you know. It's like even you can lose 10 million jobs, but you're still not recovered from that last incident. So I mean, everything can go back to being PTSD, you know. It's trauma. It's continued perpetual trauma over and over again. You know, you're still born with racism in your DNA. You still feel it's embedded in our DNA. You know, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But you know, we just have to hope that it gets better and people still continue to try to make it better. That's the hope, right?
Yep. Well, that's why, you know, allies, you know, nowadays, the numbers are much stronger than they used to be.
Right.
And everyone's very happy to come out and say it out loud, no matter who's listening, that we're allies, you know, and we'll fight the fight because it's that important now, and we can't afford to go backwards. You know, it's like you said, we have made some improvements for sure, right? I mean, we've seen some, but like you said, the road ahead is still so extremely long. And without the allies, that road will never be traveled.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of the problem is that, particularly in the United States, there's this push continually, and has been since the start, to erase Black, Indigenous, and people of color history, to not talk about it. I mean, right now we have all this push regarding critical race theory and AP, the African American Studies course, the AP with Florida. Now the College Board is not even allowing them to do the full curriculum. And until we talk about it, until we actually, teach children and teach ourselves the true history, not the fake history of the United States, but the true history of the United States and what that means, and do reparations regarding what was taken away from Blacks and Indigenous and people of color. I think we're going to be stuck. And that's just my opinion, but I don't know how, if we can't even really talk about it and learn about it and apologize for it and make amends for it, as a whole country, how are we going to move over? And I think it's going to take connections, right? Connecting, all of us connecting like we do on the webinar, and allies building and building and building so we can turn that corner. It just astonishes me is when white people are saying, well, we can't teach our kids that, they're going to be hurt. No, hell yeah, teach them. Why are we lying to our kids? Aren't we hurting our kids by lying to them?
Right.
Like, what's wrong with that? How messed up is that? That as whites, we're saying, we're not going to talk about Black history. We're not going to talk about Indigenous history and what we really did, i.e. murder people and put on these racist policies.
Oh, but it's not us, it's our ancestors.
It's our ancestors. And we're not going to tell our kids about it. We're just going to lie to our kids. So we're teaching our kids lies. Like that's a problem.
Keep perpetuating it without having effective dialogue. You just need to start having effective dialogue.
Yeah, and I have a great comment in the chat that says, I think the kids are much stronger than so many parents think, and I absolutely agree. This is learning. This is, we have to learn.
Well, and it's also not trusting that educators can't help our students discern. I mean, that's the whole purpose of education. But it goes back to the generations where books were banned, right? We just can't say anything about what makes us uncomfortable. And the reality is,
let's get
Black people don't have the choice of being comfortable or uncomfortable. You expose yourselves every day you walk out of your home. Yeah. And so as white people or as allies or white presenting, there are so many ways that we can support the advocacy, the education, the highlighting the trials and tribulations, and making the choice to be uncomfortable. Right. Because we all have gotten through 100% of our trauma so far. Right? But we can't, we're here as a community. I mean, so how do we, okay, I don't want to get into the whole idealistic piece of this. I heard all three of you at some point use the word hope. And so I'm curious, we could go down the beaten road of it all sucks. I heard Martin say there are more allies today, at least speaking up, than there were before. That's hopeful. Okay. What do you have hope about? What hope would you like to share, if any? You don't have to hope. We can talk about the crap if you want to. That's fine too.
I mean, I personally thought before the George Floyd incident, I really thought, there was hope going forward. But, I'm sitting at home crying more so than I ever have in my entire life about where we are right now. It was the most difficult time for me and my son, my family in general, to see this. Anybody that I know, it was just, every day somebody was getting gunned down, and I was just like, how is it there are 20 people getting killed, just being where they are with their family, walking down the street? How is this possible? How are we letting this happen? And the best part that came out of that was hope, was when Europe was standing up for us. Right. When, statues were being torn down, school names are being changed. Those things gave me a little more hope a year or two after. We're still nowhere near where we need to be. But I think I'm hopeful in our kids. I'm hopeful that the youth have seen the ways of the ancestors and know, like, you know, that we're all interracial. You know, TV is showing a little bit more of that. I'm hopeful in that, that our young people will continue to erase it at some point, hopefully, you know. And I think, you know, our generation and the generation coming after us is definitely going to give hope to change. It's just going to take a little more time.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
I think,
Oh.
no, I was going to say real quick, you know, like I said early on when I started speaking, that love is a beautiful thing to witness, right? And interracial relationships, you know, when you think about it, haven't been embraced that long in our history, right? And what I am starting to see, like she said, it's starting to be more acceptable to see it in the mass media. I've noticed more women of color are dating Caucasian men, and I'm hoping that will enlighten the Caucasian men in some way, some fashion, to open their eyes in which ways that maybe
Both
never
sides.
would have been open. Yeah, but both sides, you're right,
Yeah,
both sides. There's a lot of good compassion in most of us. And sometimes, you know, maybe these kind of relationships can help us bring it to the surface and it'll make us a little bit more compassionate for everybody else. So I would think, you know, in a romantic way, that can be helpful on a wider scope, right?
Thank you both. Oh, Shar.
I can kind of come behind some things that Jody and Angela said. I'm seeing sparks of it, sparks of light in the darkness, right? I encourage my husband when he gets really down with his mental health, you know, because he's in an environment where there's death all around him. Sometimes he just needs those uplifting, encouraging words. And I say, your case is back in court at a time in history when society will no longer stand for wrongful convictions, you know. And I'm seeing this traction build where I'm seeing exoneration after exoneration after exoneration now. But going back to when Jody was speaking, it's very siloed, right? Because we live in this great united country that's all doing different things in different states. And what we need for this to really become like a movement within our country is that all states start adopting the same legislation. For example, in Illinois right now, it was just passed, I want to say earlier this month, that all police recruits going through the academy now have to take a wrongful convictions course to help them understand, like, yes, I may have had an interaction with this individual before, but I still need to do a complete investigation. There are conviction integrity units springing up all over the country, but in the Deep South, we still haven't made any progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, I see hope there, but we need more accountability for police officers that engage in botched investigations, reckless investigations, more accountability for district attorneys, because right now they are the cog in the wheel that has the absolute most power and least amount of accountability, right? Mm-hmm. So when Leonard's home, I hope to start getting involved with advocating for some of this legislation. But where I don't see enough change right now is with the police brutality against Black men. And I feel like that's where we're not making progress since what happened with George Floyd. So.
Well, the hard part was seeing those African-American police officers. I'm like, really? I was like, really? We trying to go forward, not go backwards. And you just kind of, you know, like, why? Like, that was just, I'm still speechless. There's no words for that.
Well, and I think we had mentioned that briefly when you had to go help your client, the fact that was already in itself, people were trying to focus on, well, look, see, it's Black people on Black people. Yeah, but they got suspended right away. Mm-hmm. If they had been white, we would have been waiting for several
immediately.
months.
Yep, exactly. Right?
Just like the insurrection at the White House. If that was a whole Black people, they would have been shot.
Yes.
Right? I mean, hello.
They wouldn't even have gotten to
they wouldn't have even gotten to the
Capitol.
So yeah, on one hand, it's like, well, really, that sucks. It's Black on Black. And
Right.
that can be like white ammo, right? Like, well, look, your people are doing it to your people. But the reality is, when we look at the systemic racism,
Mhm. Yep.
we're talking about they got suspended instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, for sure.
So
Double standards
none of it's
always.
right. None of
Well,
it's right.
and it's also that the racist policies of policing are so embedded that it's, you know, and those policies include the things like profiling,
Mhm.
the things like, you know, stopping and frisking in predominantly Black neighborhoods, and then in predominantly white neighborhoods, you provide service. You try to like, oh, you have a problem, I'm going to work with you because we see it as economically viable here. So that those disparities in how policing is done and the policies in policing are creating really a system that is incredibly harmful and causing the murders of Black people.
Yeah.
I
wanna
just have
just-
one, it's
go
probably
ahead.
like off the subject, but I think one thing that just kind of like really, we used to have to, in the media, you know, media used to, had started calling us African American, you know, and all of a sudden in the last 3 years, it's kind of gone back to Black people. You know, I like to point out that I'm brown. I'm brown. This is Black. That's the color Black. I would, you know, I would prefer to be called African American than being called Black. I think that still sends us backwards.
Mhm.
You know, call us who we are, call us what we are. You know, I just don't want, I just really sad that the language has changed in the media in the last 3 years. With
Well, I'm
that.
glad
Thank
you
you.
said
Thank
that,
you.
Angela, because every guest we've had has been very different about that.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, right? And
Yeah.
looking back, you know, I believe actually I even asked you, and I think I forgot to put it in the description because I was waiting for the bio. My mistake. I believe you did write African American, and so my apologies to that. And I'm glad that you brought it
Yeah,
up.
me too.
I'm
Thank you.
okay being corrected. Thank you.
Mhm.
Please,
Yeah,
in fact, anybody watching this webinar,
Yeah.
we are open to learn.
And we have been corrected a
And-
number of times.
Yeah, and the other thing is that will say that literally every single guest has had a different decision around how they identify. So I will try to remember that you identify as African American and brown.
And that's a good question for, I mean, that's a good point for all of us to remember that, ask about how people identify, because we all identify differently. We have intersectionalities regarding our identification. And yeah, it's all these terms. We definitely have had people have very strong and different opinions regarding even white supremacy, white privilege.
And you have LGBT, what am I, his, her, then, them, they are, you know, it should all be included in all of those terminologies throughout everything, you know. That's just the one that's always just been my pet peeve.
Yeah. And thank you. Thank you for saying that and drawing our attention to it.
Yeah. I just want to bring attention to a couple comments in the chat. Thank you to those who are participating as attendees. It was written, as long as one lives, one never gets through racism, be it subtle or overt. Yeah, if you don't get through it, I mean, similar to grief, it doesn't just go away. And so when people say get over it, excuse me, it's not possible, you know. And then the other thing here is there's two questions. Are interracial I can't talk.
Interracial relationships actually ideal when the consequence in all probability is prejudice and discrimination?
That's a good question. You know, my son, you know, it's unfortunate that I have to tell him that he will never, ever have his white side recognized. He will always be considered a Black man first. And that is always and will be true. You know, he will never be recognized in his other counterparts, you know. So it is hard, you know, for me to even make the decision I'm going to have a biracial child, but I love him regardless. And, you know, and he has a really, you know, his dad is well versed. So he's very lucky in that sense that we both, you know, he understands the culture, which makes a big difference in raising a biracial child, is that everyone needs to understand the culture if you're getting involved.
Well, and I'm curious, the two of you have so much deep love for each other. Is it worth the prejudice and discrimination?
Absolutely, every
Oh,
second,
yeah. Oh, for sure.
without a doubt.
I mean, you
Without
mentioned,
a-
Martin, love is what really carries us through, right?
Yeah. My dad told me, Catholic school, we had to ask a question, go home and ask your parents, how do they feel about dating interracially? And my dad was like, as long as he loves you and cares for you, that's all I care about, And so I kind of brought that with me. I've always dated interracially. I've gotten sometimes a little more difficult, just being told, oh, maybe I'm too white, or I talk too white, or I talk too proper, or, there's those stigmatisms that I also have to deal with, within my own culture as well, dating Black men as well. I might not be Black enough for them. So, it's just never ending. Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's where we have to find our own inner peace and joy, right?
Right.
That's why we have to go to the spa.
Yes, let it all go away.
De-stress.
De-stress.
You see what I did there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we go
Awesome
there, I
segue.
want, because we're
Yeah.
at the end, I want to make sure we give some time
Yeah.
for both of y'all all three of you to talk about, but there was a question in the chat. Following Angela's comment about using Black to describe people, how do the panelists feel about being called white? So now we're all panelists here, and you're all the panelists and we're the facilitator. I will say to that person that I don't know if you were here in the beginning where I was describing my challenge with my race story. On one hand, I consider myself white presenting. On the other hand, because of the benefits and advantages I have had, I've been called white. I've been classified as white. When there are senses that I have to write down Caucasian or other. I do have some shame and well, not shame, anger about having to call myself white, because I don't feel like my actions, my behaviors, and my experiences have been that of a white. Jody and I had very different experiences. But I did grow up with family that was more middle class, that did have more advantages. So it's a challenge, I will say. And regardless, I still see myself as an ally no matter what. So I think it's a really great question. It's important. And I do feel like, I'm gonna claim what I'm supposed to claim, but I'm also really gonna prioritize being somebody who can help make this a better world. That's where I'm going with it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very white. and
Well, and I think it's also talking about like the idea of like the black pen and brown skin.
I know, but
you're pink right now.
Yeah, right. And I get pink. I think that it's always, I think the interesting thing for me is I've always just considered myself white, and race wasn't really talked about in my family. I have lived in predominantly white areas, so I'm really going deep regarding learning and connecting and doing a lot of reading and research. But interesting enough, on a webinar maybe a month ago, or I don't know, several months ago, one of the viewers, the attendees, was calling me melanin challenged. And that's the first time I'd heard that. And I initially was like, wait, what? And now I'm like, using that to refer to myself at different points, because I think there's something to be said there. When we look at, when we look at Black in the dictionary, it's associated with evil, right? But white is an absence of stuff, right? And skin tone is melanin. So I am melanin challenged. So initially I got kind of defensive, and then I was like, why am I getting defensive? Like this, like people have to, that's what I am when we get to the science of it and the fact of it. And what does that mean? So yeah, I went kind of on a tangent there, so I'm sorry.
And I'm olive. My skin is olive. So we're gonna get a pen out.
So I'm sorry. I went
roll
over there.
No.
So I kind of been exploring different terms. I mean, I've used Caucasian as well. but I've always preferred Caucasian or white on that. So.
Yeah.
So just so the attendees know and people on Facebook, YouTube, we do not take our guests for granted. This is a webinar. It's a free webinar to all who attend. We offer options to people who are on screen with us to support them because we don't want to take their time for granted. So we are not rich, but we offer a stipend or to give money towards a charity of their choosing or to promote their businesses. So what I would like to do is now share that Shar has a petition that she would love for you all to sign. And Shar, I don't know if I have the link in front of me, so feel free to put that in the chat, and then I'll follow it up and add it to the email that goes out to everyone who attended. We have a lot of resources that we send out. And then also the beautiful, beautiful spa that Angela and Martin have created and are running, that will soon have salt therapy room. I just want to encourage everyone, if you don't live in Martinez, California, but you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, please find a way to go visit and support them, or tell people you know that live here, or send them a donation for their presence here tonight. And we will get you that information as well in the email, but also please, Martin, Angela, feel free to pop that in the chat for the people who are here right now. And then I want to just open it up for all of you to give a moment. So Angela and Martin, do you want to share about your spa and your excitement about it and what's going on? And
So, okay, I guess we've only been open for about 10 months. And I think, you know, we really wanted to find a way to bring even more health and wellness to our own lives. And we found infrared saunas and salt therapy. And I'm like, well, we should bring it to the forefront, to the community. And, you know, there's always other alternatives, and also just another relaxation station. And we all need to do a little bit more self-care, no matter who you are, what race or nationality you are. It's important for you to take time. It's a 45-minute session, and it's all you.
it is. And there's a pain relief setting too.
Pain relief setting, weight loss setting, but you know, for the most part, you know, it's really just your time, and you can do all kind of healing within. And fibromyalgia, Lady Gaga is a big proponent of infrared because that's what she does for her fibromyalgia as well.
Yeah,
good to know.
But anyway, we're great. They have a great farmers market in downtown Martinez, but come out, try it once. We do have a special, first time single person 25, couple 40. So come on out, check us out. I'm putting it in our website. Yep. Thank you.
Fabulous. So definitely please share the link with folks, everyone who's here.
And it's a great opportunity, like Angela was saying, like just to have time for yourself as you're relaxed. I know Misha's been going and really enjoying being really mindful there. Like she was even saying, well, I started reading, but then I just stopped reading, and I was just down within myself and being mindful in the moment. So I think that's good self-care.
Yeah.
Is there I want to say too, coming from Hispanic culture, largely, it's not really built into our culture to take care of ourselves. You know, in the Hispanic culture, we tend to take care of everybody else and work super duper hard, and you know, go to bed late and wake up early and do it all again, and we don't really take the time. So this kind of self-health is not really you know, recognized within the cultures, within the
all cultures.
Yeah, all cultures, but brown cultures and people of color, because it hasn't been introduced and accessible for them for very long. And so we're really hoping to make a change in that.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and you are. Someone said, are you okay with me sharing your business from my business website? It's called Black Wall Street Online. Oh yeah. Yeah. I had to for them. Sorry.
Yes, please.
Exciting. That's incredible.
Yes,
thank you.
Please. That would be fabulous.
Awesome.
And everybody who's attending, you're going to get a follow-up email from us. And the email has lots of links. It's got resources for learned allies. There's going to be documentaries, books, podcasts, businesses you can support, charities, ways you can educate yourself. We also have scaffolding resources. We have a huge number of folks that you can support. Please, please, please share it wide. We'll be adding, every time we have new guests, we add them to the resources for Learned Allies as well, ways you can support the BIPOC community. So we'll be putting the Instagram and the petition on there for Shar and her husband. And then we're going to be putting the spa on there for Angela and Martin. And if anybody wants to be able to participate in the webinar and continue to further the to support the thriving lives of BIPOC folks, we really appreciate it. Shar, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, well, we're already past time. So yeah, I'll say no.
Okay, no worries. So what we'll do is we usually end the recording, and we offer about 10 minutes for people who are here in the webinar to come on screen with us. And so I'm going to say goodbye, Facebook. Goodbye, YouTube.
Thanks for joining us.
Join us someday soon. Bye, everybody. Oh, I didn't do the anthem.
Oh, no.
All right, we'll play the anthem for.
Oh,
it's so beautiful, though. Are y'all able to stay just for this 4 minutes?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
It is beautiful.
It is so beautiful. I just have
gorgeous. Remember sound.
Yes, thank you. Share sound. It's the most beautiful thing I've heard in a long time.
Lift every voice and sing. Earth, heaven, ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies resound. The rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. March on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, the chastening rod felt in the days when hope unborn has died, yet with a steady beat and not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers died. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk of the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our God, true to our native land, true to our native land.
So just to give credit,
That
this
was
was,
lovely.
yeah, and it was, I want to make sure I give credit to, so special thanks to the students of Oakwood University's Department of Communication. And I don't want to do an injustice to their names, so I will just show everybody their names because they deserve the attention that we can give them. So thank you for honoring our ability to.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So we'll.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. That was great.
That was awesome.
You're
Wow.
welcome.
It's like, oh, chills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Chills.
All right. So we'll stop
Thank
the
you,
live
guys. That was
stream
so awesome.
and we'll stop the recording.